Welcome back, guys, to the 10-minute Bitcoin show. Gonna get you out of here before the next block. What are we talking about today? We're gonna try to roll through two things. Let's see if I can make it happen. So, there's still this idea, right, broadly in Bitcoin and with Bitcoin adjacent people that Bitcoin is for some reason not a unit of account because all things are not priced in Bitcoin. This is just wrong. You've often probably heard it said that Bitcoin is money. But the question at hand here is, what is money? You might hear someone say to you that money is a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. In my opinion, that view is not correct. Money is not those things. Those things are functions of money. What does that mean? Well, money is a tool. Money is a tool that's used to solve problems. Humanity has certain problems that we need to solve, so we use tools to solve those problems. What are the problems that we solve with money? We need to store value across time and space. We have a coincidence of wants that's required in exchange where both parties have to want what the other party has. And then we have the problem of economic calculation. We need to determine what things are worth. We need to know whether or not a decision was profitable or whether or not we lost economic value with the decision. These things are the functions of money, or storing value, store of value, coincidence of wants, medium of exchange, economic calculation, unit of account. Unit of account is not some ephemeral concept. It doesn't mean that all things in the world have to be priced in Bitcoin, or that some guy in a vacuum has to be pricing something in Satoshis. Guys, prices are always calculated relative to the cost of everything else. You can't calculate the price of anything in a vacuum. UOA, unit of account, does not require that everyone else first starts using that unit as their unit of account. The only reason that most things are priced in dollars is because dollars are legal tender, which is enforced by law. The only thing that the price of something tells you in dollar terms is what someone was willing to pay for that at some point in the past, right? But what does it mean? What is the value of a dollar, right? It's arbitrary. It's relative to everything else. If I tell you that the price of a dozen eggs is $3.26, you might not have any concept of what that is if you can't compare $3.26 relative to everything else. When you make that purchase decision, you have to compare what you're giving up to buy those eggs. Is that cheap? Is that expensive? Well, that's going to be relative to the other things that you can buy with $3.26. Price calculus is always relative like this, but this is different than economic calculation. This is different than using Bitcoin as a unit of account. Most of our price data is dollar denominated because of these legal tender laws. So most of the data that we have to look at is dollar denominated, but the dollar is a terrible unit of account. It's terrible for economic calculation. Why? Because dollars lie to you. If you bought a house for $100,000, and I'm just making these numbers up, right? I know you can't buy a house for $100,000. If you bought a house for $100,000 and 5 years later you sold it for $110,000, dollars will tell you that that was a profit. Dollars will tell you that you did good on that trade. Dollars are lying to you. Dollars are not a good unit of account. When you perform that economic calculation in your head to conclude whether or not a decision that you made was profitable, dollars will lie to you and tell you that it was. If you instead make that calculation, if you instead switch your unit of account to Bitcoin, when you're performing that economic calculation of if that investment that you made, if that decision that you made was profitable in real terms, using an accurate unit of account, you will find that buying that house for $100,000 and selling it for $110,000 5 years later was actually extremely unprofitable, right? So the only thing that you're doing is you're using a more accurate system of measure to do your economic calculation. Guys, Bitcoin is already a unit of account, and it's the best unit of account there is, pretty much compared, like bar none compared to except for maybe gold, right? And of course, we know gold is not as good of a money as Bitcoin is. It's just the only thing that comes even close in its ability to accurately measure when performing economic calculation. Bitcoin can't lie, guys. Bitcoin doesn't lie. You can't arbitrarily change the unit of measure of Bitcoin like you can with dollars. Governments print more fiat currencies. That changes the unit of account. That changes and disrupts your ability to do economic calculations. It's pretty simple. I think that we can wrap our minds around that. And if you've never tried this, I encourage you to do it. I encourage you to try to switch to using Bitcoin as your unit of account, because you'll see, fiat, because it lies to you, it convinces that you need to buy that thing right now because it's going to get more expensive. But Bitcoin reveals to you that it would actually be better if you didn't buy that thing right now in most cases, because it's going to get cheaper. You're going to have decisions that you might make that you think are profitable, and dollars are lying to you and telling you that it's profitable, when the reality is that that decision that you're making is extremely unprofitable, right? And it's going to change the way that you see the world, because you're going to have more accurate information obtained with a more accurate unit of account. All right, next thing, rolling into it. Soft forks are a tightening of consensus rules. They don't usually result in contentious splits. The soft forks that we've seen activated on Bitcoin Core, to my knowledge, have never resulted in a contentious split. And the reason for this is because Bitcoin Core has always been very conservative when it comes to activating soft forks and trying to set them up in such a way where they won't activate until we reach a certain threshold of people that have signaled that they're happy with the change. And that isn't a requirement. It's something that we want to do to prevent there being a situation where there's two different sets of rules being enforced and we could potentially be reorging the network. Because what happens when you reorg the network is a block gets mined, and then later we find out that block was not valid because some other tip of the chain went on ahead and accumulated more proof of work than that tip. And when you have that happen, when you have that reorg, the two different chains will reconverge and accept the one with the most accumulated proof of work on the longest chain. And when that happens, you have double spend risk, right? This is why you typically don't want to rely on just like one, maybe not even two Bitcoin confirmations, because in the event of a reorg of the chain, a reorganization of the chain tip, you're going to find yourself potentially on that stale tip, and money you sent somebody for payment in a good or a service might be back in your wallet. Or, it's also bad if you're on the other side of that trade, because you're going to lose out. Somebody's going to lose out. And then if you don't catch that, right, you're going to have to make it right, or someone's going to be out. Right? So we don't want these types of things to happen. We don't want reorgs in the chain. We don't want contentious splits in the chain if we can help it. So in general, we don't activate soft forks unless they are generally non-contentious, right? I'm sure you're aware. I'm sure everybody's been talking about it, but this soft fork proposal, this new BIP that we discussed yesterday, we know who this is. We know who this is from. We know who is making the threats here. We know why in the README they're trying to tell people that if you don't adopt this soft fork, right, there might be legal consequences for you. There might be moral consequences for you. This is an opt-in change. This is an opt-in system. This is free and open source software, guys. This is a permissionless network. You have to opt in to upgrade software in Bitcoin. You have to opt in to changes to the consensus rules. You're not going to force people to make this change. Like, this change isn't going to happen for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's just bad, technically speaking. And everybody is kind of watching right now as Luke flails around and goes through the motions, because everyone knows that this BIP is not going to get merged into Core. But we're watching Luke go through the motions anyway, because he needs to put on this big show that he's being politically opposed, even though we all know that his idea is technically stupid, right? It's technically pointless. It's a big risk for no reason. This is clearly an attempt at regulatory capture of Bitcoin. And look, Bitcoiners, we are not threatened by this. We are not dissuaded by this. This does not scare us. Rejecting this soft fork may subject you to legal or moral consequences. Says you, right? We don't care. You're not. These are not the type of people that you're going to force. And this is why this will, if this is activated, this will result in a contentious split, because you're never going to get everybody to go along with coercive threats to an opt-in change of the consensus rules. You're just not. You're not going to coerce people into following your lead. That's not how this works. We abide by rough consensus. We believe it in rough consensus and running code. That's what makes Bitcoin work, right? That's what's gotten it this far. This is free and open source software. No one can stop them from activating this fork. But if they do, right, we might run into this situation where we're having a lot of reorgs if they have a considerable amount of hash power behind them. And reorgs are not going to be good. People are not going to like reorgs. Trust me, it's going to hurt Bitcoin. It's going to hurt Bitcoin's not longevity, it won't last forever because it'll be expensive for them to do, but it will hurt the credibility in the short term because the market won't understand it. But it is going to happen, and eventually we'll probably have two tokens with two networks.